Welcome to the 4Q podcast. My name is Sheena Shui. I have a Bachelor of Psychology, Masters of Counselling, and Masters of Social Work. My aim is to normalise rather than pathologise life. And in this podcast, we talk all things therapy, women's mental health, leadership, and business. So if you're ready to learn some tips, tricks, and hear some amazing stories to really amplify your life and your business, let's get into it. Welcome again to the 4Q podcast.
To Brooke, I am so happy to hear on the 4Q podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, I'm looking forward to this conversation. We've been
Yes.
Instagram buddies for a little while now, and
Yes.
we shared one of the same business coaches. So, and I think we've cried together in a business coaching session before. So,
Probably.
That's just the life of business, right? It's a bit of a roller coaster, but for those who don't know you and the amazing work that you do, before we get into anything today, let's start with our first of reflecting on who you are. Who is Brooke? Tell me a bit about yourself and the different aspects of the life, who you are.
I guess so. First and foremost, I don't like to lead with this because I've always had a really strong sense of who I am. But I am a mum. I have 2 kids. I'm a fitness instructor, and I've been a fitness instructor now for I ticked over 14 years. And I have an amazing virtual business that helps mums find time for themselves, and it is called Babio by Brooke, and it stands for Being Authentically Beautiful Inside and Out. And so that's exactly what I try to embody every day, is just be myself, show up as myself, and be that positive light in people's lives. So yeah, that's me. I'm a Scorpio as well, so if that helps. Scorpio.
Yep.
Yes,
Amazing. And then tell us a bit about your business. If you can tell us a bit about the business that you run and what that encompasses, and how did you come into that as well?
So I had just had my second baby, and I had an amazing job before this, and I guess this was kind of like really almost, this was a pivot for me. The business was a pivot, as I suppose like most businesses are. But I was I was meant to be on maternity leave for like 15 months, and all of a sudden I found myself mid-COVID in lockdown with no job because they'd called me one day and said, that's it, we're not reopening. And I'd done that job for 12 years, and it was kind of who I was. And I was like, oh my God, like, okay, if I can't do that now, what is it that I really wanted to do? And obviously being so newly postpartum, I was looking at people on social media, and I was feeling really triggered by a lot of fitness people out there, because after my first baby, I bounced back. I worked my butt off to look how I did. And I guess I did it not in the most healthy way with the healthiest mindset. And I was like, okay, well, how do I want to change that second time around? And I was looking at all the trainers online, and I was like, I was really triggered by them and their message. And I was like, okay, something needs to change. And I met with my financial advisor, and he goes, what do you want to do? And I was like, I guess I want to change the message, and I want to be someone who shows up and isn't perfect, and it doesn't have to be. And I show up with my kids and it's a mess, and it's still good, but it's a bit of, it's real, and I'm always real, and I always share the real stuff. But my business is an online fitness subscription for mums, and I have both online workouts as well as live workouts. And it's about just showing up, whether you have your kids, don't have your kids, whatever. They're shorter workouts, so some are 20 minutes, some are 30 minutes. And I just try and make it as easy as I can for mums to turn up and access fitness from someone who is, real and authentic and just wants the best for those mums.
Oh, amazing. And I completely relate to that story in so many ways, like so many aspects of it. I was the same, I bounce back. If for those who are listening, we're doing quotation marks around the bounce back, because, like everybody's body is different. And I think, two people can have the same workouts, the same calories, the same all of it, and two completely different body types. And I think, your messaging I absolutely love. And, it takes a lot of identity shifting when you have to show up as someone who you don't even recognize in the mirror anymore. That takes a lot. So I really appreciate that. And also, I tend to work with a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, high performance athletes. And one of the most vulnerable things that happens to everyone in this area is your whole identity is what you do rather than who you are. And so if you lose the job, if the business fails, if the whatever it is isn't working, you get an injury, you can no longer perform as an athlete, you're completely shattered compared to someone who's like, oh, that's just part of my life. It's not everything in who I am. And you also get really vulnerable to the red flags and the blind spots, right? Of this job actually doesn't pay me well. They don't treat me with respect, but because my identity is being the chief executive officer, and I really like being that, it's that kind of ego thing of going, actually, that's not who I am. And this doesn't really align with me. So everything you're sharing, I think my listeners and myself really relate to. So let's get into it. So again, for those who are listening or following along, the 4Q podcast is actually based on my 4R formula. So I really should call this a 4R podcast, but that's based on reflecting on who you are and then redefining. So something that, that we go through some things that we can redefine what life looks like for you. Then we redesign life so that we put some habits and things in place so that you can shift into this new definition of life for you. And then the 4th R is realign, where it's like, how do we stay on track when we're kind of coming off that? So let's get into the 2nd R of this, which is the redefine. So Brooke, for you, I'm curious around, I know you already touched on it already, but it might be this one or a different one, but for you, what's the really hard moment that changed everything for you, that really redefined you and the direction your life is going?
I mean, I guess that there was a few things. So it was 2021.
Yeah, there's always a few. So just pick one. That's totally fun.
Really shook me. But the funny thing is that they all happened within probably the space of 8 weeks. So I had my daughter and I was on top of the world. Like, I had the most amazing birth. I felt like I was a superhero, and I wanted to bottle that feeling and just be like, oh my God, like, my birth was incredible. And I know that not everyone's birth is like that. And I was really lucky, and my body is amazing. My nan got sick about a week after that, and I was trying to, keep positive and stay, on in my positive mindset and, be upbeat, and nan was going to be okay. And then we sort of realized, no, nan wasn't going to be okay. And she passed 4 weeks after my daughter was born. So that was hard. We had just gone into lockdown 3 days before she passed. And so there's a lot of trauma with that in terms of, we didn't get a funeral. We did, but there was 10 people allowed. So my sister and I had to sit in the car and watch her funeral happen, which was something that was very intense moment. And I was like still trying to be upbeat and be positive and hold it together for my kids, because I knew that, my energy was definitely going to affect my daughter in those first few weeks. So I was trying to be really upbeat and happy, and it's still okay. And Nan is at peace, and it was all fine. And then it was the week later after we lost my nan that I lost my job. And so that was a huge thing, because we were in lockdown. I took an immense amount of pride in what I did. We had built an incredible community. I worked at the Australian Institute of Sport, and I didn't train athletes, but I had built a community over those 13 years. And for me, it was like overnight I lost an entire family. Like, my family was gone, and we'd been together. I was 18 when I started that job. And so for me, I had gotten engaged, gotten married, had my first son, had my daughter, with this incredible community around me, and overnight that was taken away. So not only did I not have my nan, but then I didn't have a family to lean on during that time. And that was tough. Like that was it it I didn't think it would take me as long to get over it as it's done. And even now it still hurts, and it's still, you know, I still think about it and go, the circumstances in which it happened were really not fun. So I think that was a huge pivotal moment in my life, because obviously then it brought me to where I am now in terms of, you know, making the business. And I wouldn't have had that push had I not lost my job and had to find something else to do. So I think that's the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because um, I have had periods of my life like that, where it's like the universe and timelines are collapsing in on each other in that moment. It's like you're destined for something bigger, but to get there, the universe is like, I'm going to remove all the things so you have space for this. And it is awful to live through.
It's almost got to crush you to rebuild you, sort of thing.
And that's the thing, is like, from a spiritual perspective, right? And, you know, for those of you listening, you know that I'm sort of leaning into that a little bit more, because I'm trying to be authentic for who I am too. And that's a big part of my practice and who I am. And so if you're one of these law of attraction people like myself, you know, there is this idea that you don't have to go through pain to get to the other side. But there's that Rumi quote, right, of the wound is where the light enters. And I find sometimes some of the most painful experiences, don't get me wrong, we have to process them. They leave trauma. We have to work through it. But on the other side, so much light, so much amazing stuff. But again, I'm really thankful for you sharing that, because it can feel like that. You know, they always say when it rains, it pours, right? Like one thing after the next thing after the next thing. And, you know, feeling like you're losing every aspect of life sometimes. And those are really the darkest and hardest moments. So I guess that leads us to the next question, which is this redesign aspect, right? Of like, what tools did you use to design your life better from that moment? You know, how did you get through that and go, actually, you know what? I have an opportunity to start this business and do something that I'm actually passionate about, that works with my kids and my schedule. You know, how did you go from there to there?
I guess like I've always been super lucky, and I've always done something that I've loved. I've never had to work a day where I didn't do something that I loved. And I think that that's like something that I've never taken for granted. For me, I've also had multiple things with mental health, and I've had many tools that I've had in my toolbox, probably looking back for that moment, because I knew that in that moment, everything was still going to be okay. And I was, you know, always going to be able to get a job. And I think for me, I would always think of what's the worst case scenario. So, okay, worst case scenario is I have to do a desk job. And is that the worst thing in the world? Probably not, because it'll still pay my bills and, you know, it won't make me super happy, but I'll be able to, you know, I'll be fine. I'll recover. So I think when I started to do this business, I think the business was part of that healing. So I would always look in the mirror, and when I didn't like exactly what I saw looking back at me, because, you know, I'm postpartum and my body just looked how it looked. And I would look in the mirror, and if I was ever to go and say something negative to myself, I would stop myself, and I would imagine my ideal client standing in front of me, and I would look at her and I would say, I would never say that to her. So why am I speaking to myself like that? I am beautiful, I am safe, and I am loved. My body isn't perfect, but that's okay. I can control things that I can control. And when my body is ready, it'll come back to me. And so I think I did that with everything really. Is anytime I felt bad or anytime I felt upset or I felt grief, I was like, it's a season, Brooke. and you got to feel it and you got to go through it, but every season will end. We don't know when it's going to end, but it's going to end. So I think I just looked at life like that, in that it would eventually get better and I would eventually be on the other side, but I had to just do little things within every day to get myself through. So things like meditation, the positive affirmations, and just surrounding myself with people on the same level as me. So people that were supportive, people that, because obviously my love language is words of affirmation. So if someone says something nice to me, I'm all yours, guys. Like, that's just how it is. So I think for me, surrounding myself with people that were telling me that I was strong, that I was powerful, that I was going to make a difference, that I was on the right track, that I was doing the right things. I needed to hear that from other people as well. And that really helped get me through. So I think your support crowd is really important in that too. If you don't have the right people around you, you're not going to grow and you're not going to change, or like it just makes change really hard. Like if you don't have those people that are supporting you. So yeah, those are just little things that I did. Obviously exercise is a huge part of, my life. So making sure that I was exercising and making it fit, but also not just exercising for the sake of exercising. I was listening to my body. And if I didn't feel like moving and doing something that was a little bit higher intensity, I would do something more like Pilates or a stretch class, or, something that was a little bit more mind body, to try and de-stress. Because, the stress was intense, but,
Yeah,
doing all that stuff
absolutely.
helps.
Like so many things that are gems in there. I think absolutely that community aspect is so important. I guess coming from an anthropological perspective or evolutionary perspective, right? Like we are wired for a pack mentality. We are wired for connection, regardless of whether you have ADHD or autism or all of those things where you might go, my brain's not wired for that. Or if you're an introvert or whatever, I don't care. Your brain is wired for that. And so that's why things like depression and burnout really thrive in isolation. And you really, just your brain from making eye contact with someone, and even this on Zoom, surprisingly, we're not in the same room, but I can see you, I can see your facial expressions, you can see mine, I can hear your tone of voice, you can hear mine. There are so much stuff going on in your brain that's healing. Your nervous system can feel, I'm safe here. This is a space for me. I'm surrounded by people who are caring and are on the same path, like you say, like unbelievably important. So that again, I'm really happy that we're launching this Clarity Collective, because that's what this is all about, right? It's like finding your people who are interpersonal development, who are on the same path of, growing their career or starting their business more in alignment with who they are, but it isn't all of their identity either. So I think that's really important. But Brooke, I want to touch on your other tools as well, like around, first of all, the mindful movement, because one thing that I do sometimes work with my clients around is high intensity interval training actually increases cortisol, which if you're stressed, burnt out, anxious, you do not need more cortisol. And this is why I so encourage things like walking, Pilates, yoga, even weightlifting when it's done very mindfully about what is my form, body weight exercises, all of that. You would know this.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that. Can you talk more about, I guess, that healing part of that?
Definitely. Like for me, and you feel it when you're in that burnout phase, and you try to add more stress into your body. Like you feel it. You feel crap. Exercise is not meant to make you feel crap. And I think we are so programmed in diet culture as well to be like, it's all about burning calories. You must burn calories. You must, have a calorie deficit, all that sort of stuff, which is, yes, you must burn calories in order to, or you must have a calorie deficit if you want to lose weight. But it's not always that intense, and we take it to the absolute extreme, and it doesn't have to be. And I know, like, I train my mums, and we have 4 classes. We do a bar Pilates class, we have Pilates, we have a strength class, which is a little bit more weights, sometimes high intensity, but not always. And then we've got like a rest and rejuvenate session. And I made sure that I had those sessions in there for those mamas that were coming to me that were burning themselves out. And they are on my timetable and on my website because, and anytime a mum comes to me and goes, hey, Brooke, I'm stressed and I need, like, I need to move today. I'm like, go and do a rest and rejuvenate and you'll feel 100 times better. You're still moving and you're still in your mind. You're like, okay, I've done my exercise for the day, but you haven't put more cortisol into your body. So I think, yeah, that was a huge thing. And knowing when your cortisol is high as well, like if you're waking up and you're stressed, obviously don't do a high intensity exercise. If in the afternoon you're a bit calmer and you're like, okay, I've lowered my cortisol and things like that, then you can probably jump in and do something that's a little bit more intense. But yeah, I think that's something that we don't think about when we exercise is stress is exercise. Stress is a form of, sorry, exercise is a form of stress, right? I got that backwards. My mum brain. Um, and that's the thing is we don't think of it that way. And so making sure the mind body ones are there or you've programmed them into your training, I think is really important. And I love that I get to teach mums that. I love that I get to teach mums to de-stress and be more mindful about their body and how they're feeling. And I've had mums come to me after a workout and say, Brooke, I cried after a workout because I was just, they'd been blocking out some of the things that were stressing them out. And when they came into a Pilates class or one of the rest and rejuvenates, they actually were able to tune into that and listen to themselves and listen to what they needed and release that emotion. And I think that when I get those messages, like that just lights my soul on fire. And yeah, I love that I've been able to make that change, not only for myself, but for other mums too.
Yeah, that's incredible. I absolutely love that. You know, how lucky are your community to have you? Because, you know, that's so different to the like lose 20 kilos yesterday, like you lose 20 kilos like by the end of the week, like ridiculous, like have a 20-step morning routine. Don't fuck the kids off, right? Like, you know, like, and it's so unrealistic. And no wonder we all burn out trying to chase such unrealistic standards, you know, just because people want to sell quick and awful results. So, you know, I really love that you're shifting beliefs around that. And, you know, the body keeps score, right? So when we release this stuff, when we connect again, we really are releasing that emotional trauma, that all of that stuff. So I absolutely believe in the mind body connection, body mind connection, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. So one thing just quickly before I want to move on to where you are now, I guess, is something you mentioned that came up in our last guest. So Natalie from Storybook House, she also mentioned this in her guest with me, was what's the worst that can happen? Like that is such a powerful tool of we have this exercise called playing the tape through, basically, where it just and it's an old school saying, like it's based on tapes. So, but basically it's just based on this concept of if you actually play out a scenario, if you go, okay, what is the absolute worst that can happen? When you actually play it out, like, okay, if I quit my job today, do I have enough in savings to pay the rent? Okay, yeah, I've got enough in savings to pay the rent. Could I find some part-time work pretty easy? Oh, yeah, probably. I know such and such could get me a job, and then I can start doing my stuff on the side. Do I know someone who could possibly get me some work? Yeah, like you really, once you actually play it out and actually just, instead of just stopping yourself at, oh, I can't possibly quit because all my bills are too high or whatever it might be, like actually play out the scenario. And even the worst case of like, maybe I'd have to live with my parents again, but it wouldn't be forever. Maybe it's just you're in there, like whatever the scenario is that you're going, oh my gosh, if you actually just sit there and play it out, it's so powerful. So it sounds like that was meaningful for you. It was meaningful for Natalie. And I can certainly say with business, with life, with the kids, with my relationships, friendships, when I keep that in mind of like, what's the worst that can happen, it changes everything. So it sounds like that was a really big thing for you.
It definitely was, because I think when you can think that, you can then work backwards. You can go, okay, well, so if that happens, okay, I'd feel crap, but I'd still be able to do X, Y, Z, and that would still be okay. And so, like, you can then think and go, I'd still survive. Like, it's not the worst thing. Um, and I think that that really helps to bring you back and be like, okay, I'm working towards this, and if it doesn't work, worst case, we're this, right? Um, and yeah, I do think in life sometimes if you do that, you can it can help you move on to the next thing. So like you said, like if you want to leave your job or if you want to start a business and you go, okay, if I quit my job today, what's the worst that could happen? You can get another job, right? You can get another work somewhere else. I think we are so lucky to live in the age that we're living because we are actually like we are able to work virtually. Like there are so many jobs out there that we can work virtually, and that's just something that we haven't been able to do. There's so many businesses we can start virtually. And I think something that's really cool is some of those businesses are really low cost. Like I've probably invested more than I should have into my business. But it was
We
still
all do.
relatively low cost, right? Like when you think about it, I've probably invested maybe 20 grand, maybe 30 max. And if I was to go and open my own gym, I'm investing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if you're wanting something virtual or wanting to run a virtual business, like it's really actually low cost to get it going. Um,
Yeah.
and we're so lucky with that. So you can pivot, you can have a side hustle, you can earn money in your sleep. The possibilities are truly endless. And I think that we just need to have an open mind when we are wanting to do something or change happens to us. Be open minded for those opportunities because they'll come knocking when we least expect it. And also be careful what you wish for because I actually think that I wished for this. And really funny looking back, they'd always say to me, I'd worked with two ladies and they said, oh, what if they close this place down? I was like, oh, they can pay me a redundancy and I'll move on. Like, what, whatever. Like, I look forward to the day this place closes. And I remember the day they called me and I messaged the reception lady and I was like, oh my God, Pat, it happened. It actually happened. And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, they closed it down. And so I think be really careful what you wish for because the universe will give it to you. And it gave it to me. And I mean, it was freaking hard at the time. The timing was rubbish. Um, but everything happens for a reason. So yeah, just be open minded.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I think I had the same thing. My last job, I loved it. Don't get me wrong, same sort of thing. It was a great job, easy, cruisy, paid well, like all the things you could possibly want in a job, close to home, like great team, all the things. And yet I wasn't all in my business yet. I knew it was holding me back. And so I remember being there and on my last day before some holidays, I was like, literally saying goodbye to the place and going, you know what, I'm really excited to just work for myself. And long story short, I got a message that, yeah, no more funding, blah, blah, blah. We're really sorry. And it was like the universe said, Sheena, you're not going to let this go. So I'm going to make it go for you because I know you won't let go because it's scary to just go,
Absolutely.
take the jump. So when the universe knows you're ready, and if you're not going to take the jump, it will find a way to kind of shove you along. So I love that we both
Yeah.
have had that experience. So if somebody's going through that now, hold on, but there is another side. And so I guess that leads us,
100%.
yeah, that leads us really well to our last R, which is the realign. So, after going through this journey, what is life like for you now? And with all your current joy and happiness and some of the success you're creating, what do you do to stay on track when you find yourself maybe slipping into old thoughts, old patterns, old beliefs? What do you stay on track now?
For me, what I listen to is massive. Like what I'm feeding my brain is really important at the moment. So we are about to launch a 6-week challenge for some local mums, which I'm super excited about. But again, when you launch something that you haven't done before, there's those voices in the back of your head. So I've had to really shut them down. So for me, I listen to like a positive affirmations thing before I go to bed, because I think that last few minutes before you go to sleep, whatever you're thinking about, it's going to go into your subconscious. And I think that if you can listen to something positive, it really helps your sleep, but also when you wake up the next day, it helps your mood as you wake up. So I definitely do that. In the mornings, I try to listen to, again, more positive affirmations as I'm making the kids breakfast and lunch. Journaling can be that, but I think I'm just in a really creative zone at the moment, and that's keeping me really on track and on task and being really true to myself. um because I was told by a business coach that if I wanted to sell memberships, that I would have to tell them or make a promise that they would lose X amount of kilos in X amount of weeks, and that would sell memberships. And I looked at him and I said, but that's not my message. That's not my business. I'm not about like putting women down for their weight. I'm not about, making a promise because I don't want to do that. He goes, well, you don't want to sell memberships. And I
Mm.
was like, but I do. But he goes, you can't sell a feeling. And I got off that call and I was like, watch me sell a feeling. I'm going to friggin' sell the shit out of it. So stuff you. Um, so I think staying true to yourself and your message, being authentic and surrounding again, the crew that you surround yourself with that can foster that, is super important. So they're the sort of things that I'm doing. Obviously I work part-time. So I teach about 10 hours a week at different gyms, which I love. Um, and I try to do something for myself at least once a week. And I know that can be really difficult for mums. And I'm really lucky. For me, I get a spa and sauna for free each week because I work at a gym that has that. So I
Mm.
get to work from the spa once a week, which I love. Um, and virtually get to work from anywhere I want to, other than teaching my classes because I do that from home. Um, but being able to have the freedom to work anywhere, I think really does cement it for me that life is just getting better.
Oh, amazing. Amazing, Brooke. I absolutely love this. It has been such a pleasure to have you on. I know for any mums or any women just generally listening to this, I think there's so many nuggets of wisdom that they can get out of this. And so if there was like one kind of final message that you could give to women generally, or anyone listening, is there any sort of final thing you just want to solidify for them?
I think something that's a little bit different is like speak to yourself how you would speak to your best friend. And if you can do that, you'll never speak negatively about yourself again, ever. So I think that's again something that helped me, and something that we often don't think about when we're in that negative thought process. But when you look in the mirror and you go to say something about yourself, just think about your best friend. You would never say that to her, so why say it to yourself?
Oh, amazing, Brooke. What are words of wisdom to end on? So listen, before we go, where can people find you? If they're all about your message, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram, which is it's at Babio by Brooke or underscore by Brooke, and I think they'll be in the show notes. I also have the Facebook page. I have a private Facebook group which I do free classes in, and I also share loads of recipes and loads of top tips for working out with your kids. So I'll give Sheena the link to that as well if anyone wants to join that free group. But we have an online membership too, so you can jump on, and if you want to do work with me one to one, I offer that too. So yeah, that's kind of where you can find me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again. That was a
Thank
wonderful
you.
conversation. Yeah, as just like Brooke said, if anybody wants to check out her Facebook group, check out her Instagram. She's doing incredible things over there. I'm always like cheering you on, going, yes.
I feel the same about your Instagram. Every time you post something, I'm like, dang, that's a good message. Like, that's a good one.
Yeah. So, if anybody wants to find her, I'll have that in the show notes. Again, thank you, Brooke, and we'll see
Thanks,
you
Sheena.
around real soon.
Yes.